For those of you guys thinking that I'm going to be here depressed this week because of what happened Sunday, no, 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 no. We got to get into some stone cold hard facts. We'll do that later. But for today, guys, it's all fantasy football. And joining me today is the fantasy football expert. You know what to do when you're having fantasy football trouble. What do you do? Oh, you could ask yourself, what do I do? But instead, what do? I ask Andy, baby. Andy McNamara, how are we today, sir?
I'm doing good, Griff. Doing good, brother. Yeah, interesting week 5, and boy, injuries aplenty. There's going to be some busy waiver wire action, I'm sure.
I know. I put in a claim this morning for one KJ Osborne just for a little bench step help. Unfortunately, it's coming at the cost of one of your guys, People Jones, who's had a bit of a quiet start to the year. But I saw the start to there. Before we start, I remember I messaged you this a few weeks ago. And if folks, do you guys remember last year's episode when we were talking about fantasy sleepers? I was a year early on someone. That man, David Montgomery.
Boy, how bizarre with what the Lions spent in draft capital on Jahmyr Gibbs. And you keep pushing David Montgomery. And now Gibbs he missed last week. He was out and he's banged up. And Montgomery, who was every bit the average running back in Chicago, has just broken out in Detroit, which goes against all sense because of what they spent in the draft on Gibbs. But here we are.
Exactly, because the thing with a guy like because I said it last year, is like this whole role where I thought Chicago's going to run the ball a lot. I wasn't too sold on Khalil Herbert yet, who's looking good in Chicago, by the way. But with Montgomery last year, I was like, hey, it's a good pick to have for your flex, good 5th, 6th, 7th round guy. This year, it's the exact thing that I was looking at for this year, but I feel like he's going to be that guy that next year people are going to draft like in the 2nd or the 3rd round, and there's going to be a lot of buyers or more. So I feel like this is the year to get Montgomery. He's a good RB, like I would say 3 or 4 in your team. I wouldn't go 1 or 2 yet because we've seen, for example, like I'll give another example. I like a Christian McCaffrey, for example, who's just, hey, touchdown every week. Yeah. Or in the case of me, I almost did something very stupid, which was I was nearly right. So I had one, so I'm in 3 leagues, one with you, and there's 2 other ones. One of the ones I picked Jamar Chase 2nd overall, nearly traded him this week. Ooh. I'm really glad I did not. I'm really glad I stayed away. 44 points. I still lost because the rest of my team was pretty bad. But for the fact that he had, like, he's back, it's just, and I remember I told you as well, I have an egg on my face moment I'm going to own up to right now for Jets fans. I'm sorry if I told you guys not to take Breece Hall. He's an alien who's come back from his ACL.
Right. He is back, and he's really the only positive to look at on that Jets team right now. Like the Zach Wilson thing, despite the blip, let's relax. Okay, this guy's back up next year somewhere. Let's realize that. But Breece Hall, yeah, man, he's cooking, and boy, Dalvin Cook. I still, it always amazes me when this happens, and we've seen it many times, but it always amazes me when you have like a Dalvin Cook who was an RB1 last year, who was a borderline elite guy, go to just change of pace fodder. Nothing. Dalvin Cook was a 1st round fantasy pick last year, and now he's getting like 7 points a game. It's ridiculous.
It's everyone thinking, I think it was just because it's the whole, not ready from an ACL injury, because it takes people a while to recover from those. Mm-hmm. And then you had like that unknown factor. So it's like, hey, Dalvin Cook's a good piece to kind of come in and do that. So the sense made was there, but at the same time too, it's kind of like the David Montgomery take from last year where it was like, hey, he's not as good. But then now, even going back to your point about Jahmyr Gibbs, I've seen people pissed about Jahmyr Gibbs where it's just like, oh my God, they're not using him. And I'm like, you were the guys drafting him in the 3rd or the 4th rounds, which you should not have been doing. Because it's like, it's the whole Kyle Pitts experiment all over again, where everyone thought, yeah, he's going to come in and great. The only other thing I'll say too is fantasy-wise, Bijan looks really, really good. But he is worth, I think, where he went in the draft. I will say that right now. He is worth that like mid to late 1st round pick. Not top 5, but like back end of the top 10.
He's certainly capped with just that Atlanta offense overall, right? That's it. If you have Desmond Ridder at quarterback, that's just kind of where you're going to be. But he's so talented that he's going to overcome that. And you're right. Where he went seems about right now.
Yes, and obviously, one thing I want to get into with you quickly is rookies with fantasy. Obviously, Puka Nacua is a surprise. Is there anyone else that's really stuck out to you that's kind of come out of nowhere from the rookie scene?
CJ Stroud not having a turnover. What? Like not having a turnover as a rookie on the Houston Texans, who suck. Like, let's not forget, this is a bad football team. And CJ Stroud, as a rookie, who I stomped up and down, I said on your show, my show, other shows, that CJ Stroud should have been the bona fide, clear number 1 first overall pick, and that Carolina were fools for not taking him. I'm being proved right on that point. But CJ Stroud, like Griff, he's distributing. He's smart. He's seeing the field. And ultimately, for a rookie quarterback, if you're throwing touchdowns and not throwing interceptions to go along with those touchdowns, that's a unicorn.
So in 4 games this year, he's only had 2 games, by the way, for a rookie quarterback under 20 points.
Isn't that wild?
And it is wild. Another guy who's been solid too is Brock Purdy. The same thing. Like, I don't ever like to go system quarterback. 17, 14, 20, 21, 26. He's just getting hotter as the season goes along. Now, obviously, he's going to Cleveland on Sunday, so we'll see how that goes.
Ooh.
But I'm in a moral dilemma now where I have Stroud and Purdy in a 2 QB league, and I had Herbert on the bye. Do I stick with those 2, or do I insert Herbert against Dallas, in which they're going to want to come out firing because of, look, you got your ass kicked on primetime TV. So I'm kind of in that moral dilemma now where I'm like, do I start Herbert? Do I keep Stroud and Purdy in there? Because Stroud and Purdy are 2 quarterbacks that are honestly security blankets. And the other thing I'll say quickly with Purdy, I got Purdy in like the 7th or the 8th round, and I got Stroud in like the 13th round. So it's just like he really went unnoticed. This is a 2 QB league, by the way. Yeah. He went really unnoticed to where now it's, hey, you're right. He's the number 1. He should have been the number 1 pick. Bryce Young, I feel like, will have a solid NFL career. It's just Carolina. We know pretty much what they are. They're a pretty middling team where it's like you'll have a rookie quarterback with pretty average weapons. No one that really sparks your interest with fantasy football.
And he's small. That's the other problem. He already got banged up a bit. Like the more he goes, that size is going to become an issue. Like the wear and tear. If he gets, there's a lot of fast 300-pound giants coming to try to squash you. And when you do that, and you're Bryce Young, who's 5'9" and 180 pounds, that's not going to end well majority of the time. So that's the other thing, the durability long-term.
Yeah, and I think there was that whole weird like off-field. I don't know the name of the test, but there was a test where CJ Stroud got like an 18% on, and I think it was just I think it was just that got leaked because I think executives from teams that were like in the 3, 4, 5, 6 range were hoping that Houston would pass on him, but then Houston saw him and were like, no, we're taking him because that's the right pick for Houston because he not only is good for fantasy, but he is a franchise quarterback at the moment.
Yes, and he overcame so much at Ohio State, too. People don't talk about this nearly enough. Bright lights, big program, so nothing's going to shake him. He arguably go to less of a microscope in Houston than he was at Ohio State.
Oh, yeah.
And what people forget as well is when C.J. Stroud first started for Ohio State, his first couple games, bad. People wanted to run him out. Like, nope, get him out of it. And what did he do? He overcame on the fly, got better and better. So this guy's already used to overcoming. He's already used to the big pressure and succeeding at it. So I don't think that gets talked about enough. The mental toughness and ability to adapt for CJ Stroud is one of those things you can't necessarily measure.
No, you can't. You can't because like you're literally right too. Where Ohio State, you're expected to win championships every year.
Yes.
He had a loaded quarterback room. He sat behind Justin Fields for a year.
Yeah,
and then he beat out Quinn Ewers for the starting job. Obviously, highly touted prospect. He's doing great in Texas right now, even though they lost on Saturday. But no, he literally went into the thing at Ohio State. He won a Rose Bowl in an amazing shootout in 2022 against Utah. And then last year was on the cusp of beating Georgia in Atlanta in the Peach Bowl, which I know it's just like all those things. But look, Ohio State last year had a really shaky year. They haven't won the Big Ten since 2020. And look, now you're in Houston, which I'm going to say this right now. I know everyone with coaching, you want that next guru. Like, you know how it's always like the offensive guru, defensive guru, kind of like the hire you. I'm not dogging Stefanski, but it's like kind of like why Stefanski was hired by the Cleveland Browns, why other coaches were. I think now you go for the culture hire, and I think that starts with Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions. And we've seen that with Houston right now, where D'Amico Ryans, I look at Houston and I'm like, maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but like 25 or 26, I look at as the team where it's like, they're gonna be a team that's no longer, hey, just you go in there and a stomp win. Like even look at Arizona this year. I know they're 1-4. Arizona went out guns a-blazing against Cincinnati. Their only tough game really was the loss to San Francisco. Besides that, New York, look, they let that get by them. They beat the Dallas Cowboys for Christ's sakes,
I
and
don't believe
Washington. Yeah, that's the thing. Because I have this great philosophy. So, guys, fantasy/betting episode. But good teams win, great teams cover.
There you go.
Yeah,
I like it. I like it.
So obviously, when we're talking about like CJ Stroud with rookie surprises, besides Montgomery, is there anyone that's really been a fantasy surprise for you, like a later round pick that's kind of like just burst on the scene where it's like, yeah, he's doing him?
Well, you mentioned Puka Nacua earlier, and I just don't think we can. I can't remember somebody that came so far out of nowhere. Like Griff, nobody, rightfully so, nobody was talking about this guy at all. I actually have, because I make notes in my little notebook when it's combine time, right? I'm as we talk about combine junkie, and I went back and I was looking through, and I had a star beside Puka Nacua, and first of all, the name kind of jumped out. I'm like, it's kind of a fun name to say.
Yeah.
And I put a little star, and I'm like, fast, good hands, route run. I'm like, huh. And so I put a star, made a note, and kind of forgot about him. And all of a sudden, Cooper Kupp goes down. And we're not just talking about a guy who pops for a week. Like, we're talking historic numbers.
Mm-hmm.
A guy where even with Cooper Kupp back, we still saw get a boatload of targets. And that's, if you have him and you got him, that's somebody that can help lead you to a championship. Like, that's got to be the by far biggest surprise to me.
It's just a surprise because it's a 5th round pick that came out of nowhere. It's always like, it's like Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's 5th round pick. Yeah. They did come from well-known schools too. Amon-Ra was from USC. Puka's from BYU. I know BYU's not exactly, they are in the Big 12, but they're not exactly like a top tier program like USC is. But still, the fact that you've come out there, and even though the Rams get dogged a lot for not drafting in the first round and trading away all their first round picks, I always say that the draft, you win it on Saturday. Because it's easy to get a first-round pick right. If you get a 5th-round pick right, it's huge on the scouting department. It's huge for the GM to where it's
salary
like
cap, benefits, all that.
Exactly. Because even too, like, I know everyone right now likes to say Brock Purdy's the best contract in the NFL. Sure, but it's a rookie deal. Another guy I look at as, I don't know what his fantasy scores are, but as a surprise overall is look at a Baker Mayfield who's in Tampa right now, making little to nothing for what a quarterback should be making, and has led his Tampa Bay Buccaneers to a 3-1 start, which includes a game this Sunday against Detroit in those oh-so-beautiful creamsicle uniforms.
Yeah, bringing those back. And Baker's only rostered in 19% of most leagues. And typically, even in his peak 2020 year, Baker was never consistently a high-end fantasy quarterback, right? He'd always get you kind of in the teens. But we've seen him popping a little bit. I'm a little worried because I know the Baker history from Cleveland where when he really starts feeling it there, and especially if there's a little break, there's a chance for a letdown. And that Detroit defense scares me a bit. But hey, if you need some bye week help or want a little shakeup, I like the Baker option this week when you look at how he's been doing, the confidence he's been playing at. Another one too, like real life wise, the Broncos are a tire fire, but Russell Wilson is only rostered in 56% of most leagues, and he's popping 20+ fantasy points almost each week. So he might be there for you.
It's just with Russell Wilson, there's that potential chance of buyer's remorse. I like Baker Mayfield better because not only does I think he has the better weapons, you have a stud wide receiver in Mike Evans who's on a contract year, who's trying to prove to not only the Buccaneers, but the rest of the NFL, hey, I deserve this amount of money because I'm going to be signing my last probably NFL contract of my life because he's crazy. Like I said, it's scary to think that like him and I are the same age, but yet he's on the cusp of retirement. That's just proving how old I know Andy, you're older than me, but for me, it's just like that reality check of like, I'm getting old. I'm turning 30 in 2 months, yada, yada, yada. But with
that's
all
the benefit of being 6'5", man.
Yes, that's the thing. You're 6'5", you're talented, you're a first-round pick.
You're a beast.
You had no expectations on you this year. They're 3-1. I had them as a 5-win team this entire year. Now the wheels could fall off in Tampa, but I feel like when there's not pressure on Baker to win is when he's the most dangerous. And I know that's a quote term you guys love to use in Cleveland when he was a Brown.
And remember, Mike Evans, this week tracked that hamstring issue because he is getting an MRI a little banged up. So just to track for the early going of the week.
Yeah, if anything, you can always go and grab like a Chris Godwin, probably. I think he's not there, but if you have him, I would say start him this week, especially with a tweaked hamstring, which leads us now to the Minnesota Vikings issue with Justin Jefferson being placed on IR. Do you take that as, I would, obviously you do not drop him. No. My question for you is if you're looking to make a waiver claim, Do you go for a KJ Osborne, or do you see if Jordan Addison is available? Because I know Jordan Addison was a guy that was being targeted a lot in the 9th to 12th rounds in a lot of drafts this year.
I drafted Jordan Addison on 2 of my teams for this specific possibility, with the caveat being that I thought he could be a producer, which he has been for most part, half and half, on his own as more of a flex WR3. Now, Jordan Addison is rostered in 88% of most leagues, so he's probably gone. However, it's always worth the search. Give a little search. Never know. If he is gone, then the next guy up, again, and he's not going to be here, but I'm talking about from the weapons side of where Kirk Cousins is most likely going to be looking. TJ Hawkinson is going to be great. He's not there. But KJ Osborne is next up. And the reason I go with Osborne is because we've seen him actually do it. We're not hypothesizing here. We've seen him in the past, last year and maybe the year before. When given the chance at some volume, he can produce. And he has 2 touchdowns this year. And I think KJ Osborne is a great pickup, currently only rostered in 11% of Yahoo leagues.
I know. I was just looking at that stat just because that's what I do. We look at stats on the fly here. And I saw that 11%. So, guys, if you have him, I'm not saying if you have – so some leagues, like one league I'm in, has a maximum rule of 50 moves a year, which is fine. If you have an FAB league, I would say use a good amount of money on him, but say if you have $100 in your league, don't go spending all the $100 on him. Maybe try to throw in like maybe $15 to $20 of your FAB, just because you want to get there in case you do grab him. You're not wasting all your money to where it's, hey, if he goes down once Justin Jefferson comes back, which is pretty much probably going to be around the middle of November. You want to save yourself. You want to preserve yourself for when JJ comes back. And if you drop him, it's not a move like that, because like I know a lot of people were going out there and spending all their FAB week 1 on Puka Nacua.
Exactly. And I spent a good chunk, and it worked out for a little bit on Tutu also. He's going to be like, that's a guy who, is he droppable? I don't want to say that. I have him parked on my bench because the first 3 weeks he was popping like crazy as well. I'm have him on the bench because you never know with Cooper Kupp or anybody else coming down. I'm going to park Tutu for a while. He's been dropped all over. If you have a spot on your bench where it's like, you're not going to play a certain player, pick up Tutu.
Yep.
Put him on there. Let him take a seat. Look, even with Kupp coming back, he still got a touchdown.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so he is still involved. It's just not going to be as much, and you never know what the injury bug brings. Right. So
100%. You don't know in this league, because I heard this on a podcast yesterday and it made complete sense to me, where out of all the major 4 North American sports, there's not a gap shorter than from first place to last place than the NFL. Because think about it. Right now, from first to last, it's 5 games. Meanwhile, with hockey or baseball or basketball, it's at least 30 to 40 games of winning difference between the two. So it's just one of those things where if you have a guy that's on an 0-5 team, or if you have a guy that's on a 5-0 team, you just don't know what can happen, because it's any given Sunday and anyone can get hurt at any given notice. So you just got to wait and see what ultimately happens. Going now to you, because if we do me, it's going to be sombering and we're going to go over your time limit. But you're Cleveland Browns. Right now, obviously coming off the bye week, bad loss to Baltimore. I know you were there for the great win against the Tennessee Titans.
Yes, that was fun.
How are you feeling about Cleveland right now as a whole, like for the rest of the year? Because obviously, look, you guys I feel like right now it's been so wishy-washy with you guys, where it's like week 1, killer win against the Cincinnati Bengals, and then you have a humbling loss against Pittsburgh, but then you shoot back up to where you just beat Tennessee at home outright, but then the next week Baltimore comes in and does the opposite to you guys with DTR starting. So with this schedule going forward, how are we feeling about Cleveland's chances for the next couple months?
Well, for this week, Sunday, I have zero confidence against the 49ers. None. I'm trying to maybe. It's like, unless Christian McCaffrey gets struck by lightning, along with Brock Purdy, you're not. I don't think you're winning this game. I just really don't. I hope, obviously, I'm incorrect, but I just really don't see how that would happen. Also, as of Monday, Deshaun Watson was not practicing outside. He was inside with what was a last-minute scratch in Baltimore, and people thought was minor, a contusion. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors and weirdness. We're like, what is actually going on? So, especially if Deshaun Watson doesn't play, goodbye. Take whatever the spread is for San Francisco and keep going. But even if Deshaun does play, it's still so inconsistent. He had the one good game against Tennessee, looked like he had broken through, missed that game. What's the shoulder do? Can Stefanski plan better? Because that was a horrific game plan to have DTR throw that much. It was embarrassing. against, I don't think it's even an argument, the most complete team in football in the 49ers.
Yeah, because like I'm looking at your schedule right now. So say even if you guys go to 2-3 after the bye week, it's you play at Indianapolis, which is a winnable game, at Seattle, which will probably be a shootout. By the way, going back to it, it's 4.5 right now. It's a spread for San Francisco on Sunday, so we'll see. I feel like the less that Watson practices, the more that'll probably climb. But for right now, I think they're pretty much spanking on, hey, the Cleveland defense has a chance, but it's more about like, look, Myles Garrett's going to have to get to the quarterback. That's the biggest thing if Cleveland's going to want to have to stay in this game. And then at Seattle, Arizona, you guys have a three-peat in a row of birds. You have at the Seahawks, versus the Cardinals, at the Ravens, and then that Steeler game November 19th, which I know Cleveland gets up for before you go to Denver to end November. So after that stretch there's a very winnable gap right there to where, hey, yes, you have a tough game. You're playing arguably the best team in the NFL, if not the best team in the NFL, before you have this chunk right here of 6 games where it's like, hey, we can win this because I'm looking at your December at the Rams, Jags, Bears, Texans, Jets, Bengals, which that December right there, that's going to be a huge, guys, because you guys right now are that team where it's like you're in the mix. I said in the mix. Yeah, I said that all year long where if you look at the standings for the AFC, I would say right now there's a few teams that are still, I would consider, in the mix, even though there are there's only 2 1-4 teams in the AFC. But besides that, there's the gap right now between the last wild card spot with Buffalo at 3-2. It's 2 games just back to last place. So that's where it's coming in handy, where one good week or 2 or 3 good weeks can really make or break your season. And I also stress that importance from week 7 to 12 because you got to win some games in there to where if you lose in December, the knife cut doesn't go as deep as it would if you lose a game in November that you should win, and then you lose a game in December that you should win, because then now you're pretty much playing playoff football throughout the month of December. And if you're doing that, chances are you're not going to make the playoffs, or if you do, it's going to be an early exit.
Yes, absolutely. So, you got to get through this game, try to get things healthy with San Francisco. Then, like you said, bunch of winnable games, but you have to win them. You should have beat Pittsburgh, didn't. So you have to actually go in and win those. And what type of mood? What is Deshaun Watson's health like? Can the running game get back on track in a committee form without Nick Chubb? Lots of questions there, but you're right. There is a winnable stretch. I hope, come on, give old Andy something to cheer about. Damn it, in December. Let's make it fun.
And then if I were to ask you right now, because obviously I think you said this to me in August, but Kevin Stefanski, is his seat still hot, or is it more or less kind of cooling down where it's kind of like a lukewarm, or where do you stand on him?
If we were talking about in a car and you had like the 2 levels of seat warmers, I'd put it on the 1 seat warmer. It's comfortable, but you can start to feel it a bit. This next stretch, the next month is going to be really big because with this roster, the most talented roster on paper this team has had since 1999, without a shadow of a doubt. If you go under 500, I think you got to fire him. No question. If you go, 10-7, you lose on a tiebreaker. Okay, depending how it looks, you can probably make an argument. But there's no excuse. You've spent all offseason with Deshaun Watson. He's now played 10 games as a Cleveland Brown going back to last year. There's no rust. Enough. You're getting $230 million, bro. You got Brock Purdy who has a roommate. I heard this morning he has a roommate in San Francisco. His whole contract is $3 million. And he's one of the best in the league. Come on. Enough excuses. Get balling out.
That's it. I like your analogy to where if it's like you go 7-10 or 8-9, that's where it's kind of like, yeah, he's got to go, because Cleveland's like the opposite of Denver. Obviously, I know both quarterbacks are on expensive contracts. You can't get out of the Deshaun Watson contract because it's going to be, hey, we're going to bring in a guy who will work with Deshaun. Meanwhile, with Denver, I've been saying this, they're not going to get rid of Sean Payton in a one-and-done scenario. They have an out in the Russell Wilson contract this year where he's due guaranteed money. So if they are bad as they are, I can see a world, this is probably going to happen where Russell Wilson, the Denver Bronco experiment failed miserably. Mm-hmm. And then when you look at other coaches right now, there's no coaches that stand out as fired. And obviously, look, mine is one that everyone's going to talk about. I'm going to say this because he's been there for so long. If Bill Belichick is to not be coaching next year or with the Patriots as a whole, it's not going to be a firing. It will be a mutual handshake agreement to walk away. It will be because they're not going to embarrass him. No, there's about 5 coaches in the NFL right now who I think have earned the right to do that, which is him. And then there's 2 coaches in your division, Harbaugh and Tomlin. I think both of those have earned the right. Pete Carroll,
Andy Reid.
Andy Reid. I would throw those guys in there who have won Super Bowls, who have been, which that's the thing too. I don't know if you, before we go, I don't know if you know this or not, but Sunday was the 34th meeting between Harbaugh and Tomlin all time.
Really?
Second to only Lambeau and second to only Hallis and Lambeau.
Wow, really interesting. Yeah. Who has the lead on that? Did they say who had like the?
Yeah, I just said it. Curly Lambeau and George Hallis.
No. Sorry, the like who has the lead between Harbaugh and Tomlin? Like wins head to head.
I think it's Tomlin. I don't remember off the top of my head. I think it's like really close. It's like
it's probably close.
It's like 15 to like 14 or something like that, or it's because I think there was a tie in there, but I think it's like they're pretty much both at like 500, or like one guy's got the advantage of the other, but I think it's Tomlin over Harbaugh at the moment. If I'm wrong, I am sorry on that, but Andy doesn't care about that because he hates both teams either way.
I hate both. I wish they would both lose somehow. Bitter.
And folks, if you stay till the end, that is the name of the podcast. Both lose somehow. Why? Because it's fun. And he said a fun name to say earlier, but that's already been a name, so you got to kind of change it up. But anyway, guys, it's another episode, 254 in the bag. We're on the road to 300 now. This has been a blast as always, Andy, getting to chat with you. Definitely have to do it again soon. Why? Because the Ask Andy window is always open. Follow him on Twitter at AndyMC81 for all your fantasy football needs. Why? Because Ask Andy wins you football championships, baby. Damn fantasy right. Football rules the world. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for us here at YWC Football Talk. Thursday night, full Week 5 preview and more of a rock bottom feeling for myself. Have a good night or day whenever you're listening to this.